Okay. Let's see. All right, so we're just letting our attendees join here for just a moment, and we'll go ahead and get started here. Wow, we've got a lot of participants joining. Welcome, everyone. And we'll just give everyone one more minute. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Knightsbridge Virtual Spring Release. We are truly so excited that you're here to taste and learn with us. If you don't want to open the wines right now, that's completely fine. Our webinar will be recorded today, and we're going to post it on our YouTube channel and our blog. And we're also broadcasting on our social channels, so you can always come back and revisit it when you decide to open the wines. So over the next 40 minutes or so, we'll be sharing insights on our 2019 Fairview Sauvignon Blanc and 3 new 2019 Chardonnays. You know, 1 year ago, we made a very quick decision to host our spring release virtually. And since then, we've hosted many virtual tastings and most certainly improved our technical skills. But we definitely miss seeing all of you in person. And you know, I am just very appreciative for everyone who is joining in and tuning in virtually. So thank you. I'm Laura Kirkley, Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Knightsbridge, and I have the pleasure of introducing our other participants this afternoon. We're joined by our hospitality team, Michael Umbel, Alicia Antone, and Alana Ladd. We have our winemaking team, assistant winemaker Derek Baljou, director of winemaking Douglas Danielak, second generation family member John Bailey, as well as founding partner Tom Costin, and of course, Kelly and Jim Bailey. They will all lead us through the wines and share some wonderful insights. So this afternoon, our format will attempt to replicate the experience you'd have if we could welcome you to the estate. We'll be covering the broad spectrum of wine styles from the 2019 vintage, and we'd love to keep this interactive, answer your questions. And so we welcome you to use the chat function and just let us know what you're curious about, and we'll do our very best to make this a conversation. There are a lot of exciting developments at the winery, so we'll take you through some of those, especially our new winery construction. And I also want to mention very briefly that we just launched a new Facebook Live series. So once per month, we are having a conversation themed around an interesting conversation over a glass of wine, something that we've all been missing this year. The dates are on our social pages and website, so be sure to tune in. Now, I hope you all have a glass of wine, and without further ado, I would like to introduce founder and proprietor Jim Bailey and Kelly Bailey.
Thanks so much, Laura. Terrific to see you, and terrific to virtually see all of you that are going to be in the screen over the course today. And thank you so much for joining us today. We just can't wait to see all of you in person, and that time is coming very, very soon. First, I should say Kelly and I extend our heartfelt gratitude to our attendees, and we are thankful for your support, both in the past, but in the future as well. As we reflect on the year, we also wanted to pause and acknowledge those who have been lost this year in the horrible pandemic. It's been an extraordinary time, and I know for all of us, you know, it's been difficult, and it's really important to say we understand your pain, because it's been horrible. We have a renewed appreciation, in part because of the year, for the health and well-being of our families, friends, community, and supporters. And we consider ourselves extremely fortunate that our entire Knightsbridge Bridge team, and our families have been healthy. That's been incredibly important to us. We're also happy to report that we've had no disruption in our winemaking, and the new winery construction has been flawless. I should say Kelly and I went into it this morning to take another look. And when we're here in California, we try to go in every day to take a look, and it's coming along in an extraordinary way. And I think when you all come here later on this year, you're going to say, wow, this is an extraordinary place. We will be making wine in our new winery this vintage, which is absolutely terrific, and we really look forward to that. And finally, with this very brief introduction, as many of you know, I saw some of you on the list of people joining us. I can sometimes be not so brief, but today I'm going to be brief because next to me, my wife, Kelly, is a much better speaker than I am, and she is going to start with a few words about our estate vineyard and some other topics that are important. So again, great to have you all, and we really look forward to seeing you this fall when the winery is completed and having a glass of wine, maybe even more than a glass of wine. Thanks so much.
It's great to have you all with us today. Thank you so much. As Jim was saying, we walked through the vineyard and the winery today, and it is just so exciting. We sort of joke around about the fact that the winery, yes, it is on track to open on time and over budget, actually, but it's going to be a beautiful, magical winery, only to be blessed by this beautiful vineyard that it will be surrounded by. We have, as Jim mentioned, been walking through the vineyard. We had a lot of rain in the last 2 days, which that March miracle has come our way. It's an exciting time in the vineyard. Right now, as we are here joined with you, we have our vineyard team pruning the vineyard. There's just beginning to be signs of bud break. It's just a thrilling time to be here in the vineyard and in this magical valley. The water is flowing. We love to hear the sounds of the birds and the water going through the creek. Everything is just coming back to life. And we do have to say that although, yes, 2020 was such a challenging year, and some of the wines that you will taste today were bottled in 2020, but we feel like the best wines are being made right now. And with the production here on our vineyard, we will be making the most exceptional wines ever. I just want to iterate a little bit of what Jim just said in regards to our appreciation for this past year. And there's a word that comes to my mind, and it's just grateful. We're just so grateful. We're grateful to our families, but we're really grateful as well to our team and the people that you'll be hearing from today. Our winemaking team, Douglas and Derek, and their heart and soul that they put into each one of these wines. Our vineyard team, as I just mentioned, many of them have been with us since the beginning for over 14 years. And that's a really, really special thing for any vineyard to have, is that precision of this longevity in the vineyard, as well as Douglas has been with us since the beginning as well. And we really, really appreciate that. And our team, DTC, Laura, Debbie, everyone has really just done an amazing job and getting us through this very challenging year. And really a huge thanks to our supporters, our collectors, our customers, and those that have continued to stand by us in this challenging, very challenging year. So we are really excited to taste these wines with you today. As we mentioned, we feel like we are making the best wines we have ever made. So we're really excited to share with you. We hope that you come October, November, December, whenever you can make it out here. And of course, all of next year, we are expecting the floodgates to open with everyone that has been cooped up in their homes, but we will welcome you with open arms. We're so excited to share with you. So with that, Debbie has done an exceptional job keeping it all together and this winery construction this year. And I want to hand it over to her, our president and general manager, because we couldn't have done any of this without Debbie. So Debbie, hopefully you are ready to take the baton from us, and we will see you again a little bit later in the virtual tour.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly and Jim. Yes, I am ready to run. Pass it off. So it's really great to be with everyone. The releases every season really remind us of what we have to offer and what we work for. So and while the winemaking team is working very, very hard on making the most exceptional wine, I spend my time right now working very, very hard overseeing this amazing project. And we wanted to really bring to you some developments. Last time we were together, we were, some doors in the walls, and we just hadn't been able to show you what we knew was coming. So, this is one side. This is the fermentation. Oh, that was the fermentation side, and this is the hospitality side. And the team together has always been walking step by step, but we do take moments to celebrate. And this is one of those moments. And this is a huge piece of equipment that actually broke us through. And there are Jim and Kelly celebrating. And, we are so lucky that they're on property as often as they are, because everyone works so hard, and it's always just so fun to share these moments with Jim and Kelly. This is the team, Vincent George and his crew. And they have been on site for 8 months now, really making this cave what will become where we store the wines. And then the construction team takes over for the actual pieces of the building. So hard at work, getting ready to have the hospitality area done, as well as the winemaking side. Hospitality is where we'll be able to welcome you, which is this side right here. And the fermentation barn is where we will be making our spectacular wine. So as you can see, it looks a lot different than those very first pictures, which is what you saw in the fall. So recently we were able to get together with the entire team. And as I've mentioned, it's an amazingly collaborative piece of work where we have Derek, our assistant winemaker, Douglas, the director of winemaking, an amazing construction team, an architect, everyone gets together. And we also, look to Jim and Kelly. We also look to Essel Tom and Manaka and Cindy to really let us know, that we're moving in the right direction. In one of these pictures here, you see a young man. We are lucky enough to have a next generation member of our team. John Bailey has joined the forces with us, and he was part of our walkthrough. So we really spent a lot of time going step by step, talking about what we're going to be doing next within the caves, and we want to be able to make the best wine that we can possibly make. That's really what it's all about. This is a picture of what we call our Grand Cave. It's actually almost 25 feet high. It's an unbelievably tall room, and you'll all see it when you come to visit us. But, it's always really amazing to hear the details, and everyone brings their most important pieces of what they know. So it's so important to have the winemaking team working hand in hand with the construction team. And then, for the vision to make sure that we're going to be able to share with all of you what it is that we are doing here in the caves and in the winery itself. It's really fun to actually see how the caves are drilled. I mean, the patterns themselves are beautiful in so many ways. And most importantly, we talk about the terroir. We talk about where we're growing these grapes. And so Jim and Kelly have asked us to save a natural wall. So in the very back of this photo is the actual rhyolite, which we always talk about these beautiful rhyolite soils and why they're so fantastic in our specific terroir in Knights Valley. Well, this is rhyolite in solid form, and we're keeping it natural because we want everyone to be able to experience, why you get what you get when you come to Knights Valley. So there's still a lot of work to be done. As Jim and Kelly mentioned, we are, working every single day to get done as quickly as we can. And I think it's really important to just remember that to our team, there's nothing more important than the vineyard. There's nothing more important than where we're growing these grapes. The winery is very low impact. It's underground, preserving every vineyard that we can so that we can, grow the best grapes and make the best wine for you. So it's been a really, really amazing process and a fantastic team. But now let's talk about wine. I'm going to hand it over to Douglas. First, he will talk a little bit about the vintage because 19 was just so spectacular. We've all been lucky enough to be able to try these wines as a sneak peek. And then I know we'll get into the tasting. So Douglas, off to you.
Thank you, Debbie, and welcome to all our virtual tasters today. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited about our spring release because it allows us to introduce the 2019 vintage, which is really a grand vintage in so many ways. So when I think of the year, I think about so many new exciting projects, the winery being built, Derek joining us as assistant winemaker, a lot of great developments in the year. But as the vintage proceeded, there are three things that really stood out for me. And, one of the things I see in the wines that we'll taste today is this sense that, wine writers will often crown a vintage great or good or middling. But in this case, 2019, I think we have really a grand vintage. And how I define that is wines that will drink well now, and they'll drink beautifully over time. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things about the 2019 vintage. And that begins with a sort of very even ripening process in the vineyard. And then, of course, very careful winemaking as we bring the grapes through the whole process. The other part of this vintage that I really love is that there's this varietal expression. So when you taste the Cabernet, the Chardonnay, they're very, very true to type, very much an expression of Knights Valley. And the third piece, which I think is really key and most important, is that you get a very great sense of our property. This just underscores what a great site we have. So we have at least 3 different soil types on the property where the expression of the wines is different in each site. And you'll be able to taste that today, which I think is just super exciting. Like from a winemaker's perspective, this is what gets us all excited to make wine, when you see all this different expressions off a rhyolite soil, off a loam soil, and you see the different expression of these grapes on these sites. And so we're very blessed to have not only that terroir, but then also leadership and ownership, which allows us to make the very best wine. So that gives you a summary of the 2019 vintage. And to begin the tasting today, I'm going to allow John and Derek to start introducing the first wine, which is the 2019 Fairview Sauvignon Blanc, which is a great introduction to springtime. So gents, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Douglas. I really appreciate you walking us through the journey of the 2019 vintage. If you have your wines open and ready to go, we're going to kick it off with the Fairview Sauvignon Blanc, and both Derek Baljew and John Bailey will walk us through this wine.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Douglas, for that introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining. As Laura mentioned, our assistant winemaker, Derek, and I are going to be discussing one of my personal favorite wines, our 2019 Fairview Sauvignon Blanc. Fairview is named after my grandmother, Ethel, and it's her first teaching post in a rural one-room schoolhouse in Fairview, Tennessee. Ethel Bailey, or E, as my family called her, was truly an exceptional person. She was born in Tennessee into a family with a long lineage of both farming and bootlegging whiskey. From these really humble origins, E was not only able to receive an undergraduate degree, but attended Wayne State University and received a graduate degree in education, all the while raising 4 children. One generation removed from whiskey bootleggers in Kentucky and Tennessee, my grandmother was able to save up enough money to send my father and my uncle to private high school and then to Harvard and Wesleyan on scholarship. Her insistence and commitment to education really springboarded my father and his brothers' lives, enabling them to reach heights otherwise unimaginable for the sons of a sod farmer. For me, Fairview is the embodiment of that aspirational quality my grandmother passed on to those that she thought had the potential to be great. I'm really, truly proud that we made a wine becoming of such an exceptional woman. And with that, I'm going to send it over to our assistant winemaker, Derek, to tell you a little bit more about our Fairview Sauvignon Blanc.
Thanks, John, for the introduction, and thank you everybody else for joining us today. I'm so proud and happy to be here with such a strong team of people running Knightsbridge Winery. But the 2019 Fairview Sauvignon Blanc is a wine that I believe is equally as rich as it is refreshing. So maybe similar to some qualities that your grandmother had. But this wine came off of Block 6B, which is on some deep alluvial soils on the east side of our property. So it gets a lot of the early morning sun, leading to very nuanced aromas and also a refreshing acidity through the finish. So this wine, I believe me and John agree that it's our favorite for springtime. So do you have any pairings that you like with this wine?
For me, oysters and this, I don't know if it gets better. We talked about with maybe a little pear or ginger mignonette. I don't know if there's much better pairing than that.
Yeah, may head out for some oysters after this, as a matter of fact. But yeah, the oysters and Meunier with the ginger and pear accent the gorgeous aromas and flavors that this wine has to offer.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. And thank you, John, for sharing your family story. That is, for me, very inspiring. And it's a wonderful opportunity for me to, as a marketer, to tell a family story that is so meaningful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our founder, Tom Costin, and also our director of winemaking, Douglas Sanulek, to take us through the 2019 Chardonnays and give us a sense of the distinction between these three Chardonnays.
Well, Douglas, you and I have had quite a bit of rehearsal time over the course of this year. Douglas and I have almost every other week gone on a virtual tasting with many of our winery supporters and groups and parties, and it has really been a lot of fun for us. So in my opinion, the Chardonnays that we've been producing since 2016 have been among the best Chardonnays that we have ever produced. 16 sold out very quickly, 17 sold out, 18 I believe is sold out. And these 19s, they follow right in the footsteps. They have received some very good scores from the critics out there. I believe Robert Parker has given these wines 94, 95 points. The Wine Spectator has rated these wines quite highly too. But what really is important is how you people like them. And I can remember years ago, it was back in the 80s when I had my first taste of Kistler, and I was just blown over by this Chardonnay. It was just incredible. And then they went through some changes in the way they were producing wines and all. And I must say, when I had my first taste of West Block, it brought me back to that eureka moment where I said, wow, it's incredible what a Chardonnay can be all about. So, and Douglas, we can talk about these individually. But I think what I'd like to share is to say that all of these wines they're all from the vineyard. The West Block and the East Block, they come from the same block. They're Block 9, one from the east side, one from the west side. The Ponticious, that's actually in Block 2A and 8. And they all share similar characteristics. They all see oak treatment. They all undergo stirring of the lees about every other week. They all will see malolactic fermentation. But where do those subtle distinctions lie? And I think part of it is in the craftsmanship of our winemaker, Douglas, and a lot has to do with his judicious treatment of the oak. You know, winemakers will tell you the best wines are made in the vineyard. And so they don't want to handle the wines too much. So if you have judicious treatment of the oak, you can bring out the best quality of that wine. And with Chardonnay, the big difference here on our wines is the fact that the Ponticious sees about 50% new oak. The East Block sees about 75% new oak, and the West Block sees about 100% new oak. I mentioned about the malolactic fermentation, and that's a secondary fermentation that the wine goes through, where the apple flavors now become more like pear. And that's when you add this richness and complexity to the wine. And each one of these wines has that. Do I have a favorite? What I would say is that these wines here, you really have to say, what food do I want to have with it? So if I'm having a lighter style fare, just a grilled chicken, the Pont is sensational. The sommeliers absolutely love the East Block, because the East Block is a wine that has this wonderful rich flavors, and yet it's still a lighter style. And the West Block, that's where I want to have that poached lobster, which is soaked in butter. So Douglas, tell us a little bit about this, and tell us a little bit about this judicious treatment, not just in with the oak, but tell us a little bit about what's happening in the vineyard, because I know it's not just letting the grapes grow and then we pick them. There's a lot that goes in between.
Yes, thank you, Tom. So, part of our, our Chardonnay program is so deliberate in its focus, and it's based on the origins of the site. And that begins with looking at the soil, looking at temperatures, looking at exposures, and saying what's really going to excel here. And on our property, we have 3 different soil types, as I mentioned, and also many different exposures. And that gives a really different expression to Chardonnay. And so we can exploit that because we're so small and we're so hands-on. Derek and I are doing all the work. You can see our hands work every day. And we can treat it in a very, very specialized way. So in the case of the Pont de Chevalier, that is sourced mostly from the lower blocks on the property on loam soils. And what I love about it is that it has a great following among our customers. And why it does is because really for them, it renews their hope in Chardonnay. Like there's been people might get a little tired of Chardonnay being too this or too oaky, but this Pont de Chevalier is perfect for a spring release because it has so much promise and so much energy. It really just brings it all to the table. And I love what it does for customers, because they'll come back and say, well, I didn't like Chardonnay, but now I've tasted this, I'm in, I'm all in. And so that allows us to then take that wine and then introduce the East and the West Block, which are just more refined versions of what can be done on our property. So as we taste the first wine, what I'll do is I'll start with the Pont de Chevalier, Tom, and I'll quickly give a couple tasting notes, and maybe you could talk a little bit to what other foods you like with it.
Perfect.
So what I love about this wine is it's unmistakable as Chardonnay. It has this beautiful integration of the oak program, which I'll talk a little bit about later. Lots of energy, but also lots of creme brulee, so this wine has that sort of really warm and inviting set of flavors that you get out of something baking right in the oven. So I love this, particularly in the springtime. This for me is Chardonnay that really works at this time of year and also in the summer. But Tom, tell me about, you're on the East Coast, and tell me what your experience is with the Pont and what you like with it.
Actually, Douglas, I'm only 5 miles from the Golden Gate Bridge right now. Cindy and I came out to California last night, so we had our shots, and here we are. We're going to be out here for about 6 weeks. But what I love about this Pont is it's this minerality-driven wine, and it is just so fresh. It'll go with fresh seafood. It goes with scallops, although I prefer a Fairview or I prefer our Sauvignon Blanc, but it goes beautifully with a fish, which is not in a sauce, a lighter style fish. But I think, as you pointed out, this is a great stepping block for people who say, well, I don't really like an oak aged Chardonnay. They taste this and they say, wow, I really do like that.
Thank you, Tom. And as Tom mentioned, we've been doing this for 12 months now, every 2 weeks or so. And we've just gotten, more used to the wines and more used to finding great food and wine pairings. So moving on to the East Block, what I'd like to mention for all our listeners and viewers today is this is one when we taste East Block and West Block where you have to not decide between one or the other. I would encourage you to buy 6 bottles of each and watch these wines as they drink now and drink anywhere now from 10 to 20 years. So that's really the fascinating thing about it. And when we engage customers and we go out and we pour them the East and West, and then we take a little survey, you see everyone raise their hand, and it's almost split right down the middle, which to me is just fascinating because it says we've done our job in expressing our terroir, our site, our sense of place in the world, and we found those differences. And in the case of the East Block, it's easily for me the most elegant wine from the property. It's a wine that really relies on this great minerality, great Chardonnay fruit, but also a great sense of texture and delicacy, which I think you only find at the highest level of Chardonnay around the world. And what I love is I can taste that wine and I can think of 1,000 dishes to have with it if I'm at a really fine meal or just, at the beachside having oysters, I mean, it is such an elegant wine. It just kind of washes over you. It's so, so beautiful. So it's one of my very favorites because it does bring out all the complexity of the grape itself. And Tom, I'm going to pass it off to you to talk about some favorite pairings.
And I'll tell you about an experience that I had at L'Espalier restaurant in Boston. I was with a group of Bordeaux fans. They were clearly French driven. And we were going to be serving our West Block Chardonnay. And I was a little bit concerned about that because I was afraid it was going to be too big and they weren't going to like the wine, but it was going with L'Espalier's favorite poached lobster. And so we decided to serve both. And right after we tasted both of them, and it was with the same course. And after we tasted them, I asked people, which did you prefer? And it was split evenly. Half like the East Block, half like the West Block. Then I asked the question, which wine did you think was paired best with the lobster? And there were only 2 people who said the East Block. And this is where it comes back to really knowing your wines and saying which one pairs best with the meal that I'm having tonight. So it is very interesting, when we speak about that. Yeah.
Sure. And then when we move on to the West Block, this is a wine where we have a great following for this wine because it is the sort of fullest expression of Chardonnay. And I think it captures not only the fruit part of Chardonnay, but it also captures every part of the fermentation, which is it captures the barrel, it captures the yeast. And one reason that's true is that we do a little more stirring of the lees, which is the sort of sediment at the bottom of the barrel. So you get this really opulent, really expressive Chardonnay that it really captures. I'd say its primary flavors are like honeycomb and just the sweetest sense of the vintage. Honeycomb's a big one, get a lot of citrus out of the wine, but also, as we'll explore a little later, this wine ages tremendously. So this is not something you have to drink today. But again, what I want to is kind of reinforce for our customers when you speak with Laura and Alicia later today is, absolutely for this vintage, make sure you get an equal amount of East Block and West Block in your cases, because this is a fascinating sort of study in Chardonnay, not only now, but over time. So I think that, gives you a sense of what the vintage is like and what our vineyard can offer. Tom, would you like to add some more comments about your favorite pairings?
The only thing I would add to finish this is on the West Block, it has a finish which goes on and on and on. And for me, that is the true sign of a really great wine, because you have all of these wonderful flavors that come into your mouth when you first take the wine in and swirl it around and you pick up all these different aromas and flavors. But when you swallow that wine and it just goes on and you keep tasting it, you say, wow, that is a really well-made wine. So Douglas, cheers.
Cheers, Tom. So nice. And I think now we hand it back to our MC, Laura, to continue on.
We are going to add Kelly to our panel and talk about the 2010 Chardonnay. That was an extraordinary vintage of our West Block. And it's one that we have a very small amount still remaining in inventory. Kelly, I know it's one of your favorite wines. So I thought it would be really wonderful for our viewers and attendees to just go back and revisit one of our library wines.
Laura, thank you so much. Yes, you know, it's one of our favorites. This is really such a treasure. And Jim and I truly just stumbled upon it in the cellar when we decided, oh, let's see how this is doing. And it has been one of our favorites here to share with friends. I'm surprised we're releasing any, because we were planning on drinking the rest of it, but we're really happy to be sharing this with our good friends and supporters. This wine is truly a beauty. I think that this wine is drinking exceptionally right now. It's funny, as Douglas was just saying, you know, the wine just washes over you. I love to say, you know, you just want to, you put your nose in the glass, you just jump in and go swimming, because it's just so enticing. And I am, you know, I'm very familiar with California Chardonnay, and I've been enjoying it for many years now. But I am always so pleasantly surprised at how gorgeous the West Block is and how well it ages. And it just keeps offering. It really does. One of the things that Jim and I often do, if not always do, is we actually, we decant our white wines. So we decant pretty much everything, whether Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay, white Burgundy, et cetera, because we really like how it encourages a wine to come along a little bit sooner than what you would anticipate. Unfortunately, half the time you're enjoying a beautiful, beautiful bottle of wine with some friends, and you get to the last sip and you're like, oh, now it's perfect. Decanting with a white wine will encourage that your wine will actually start tasting as it should almost immediately, or within 10-15 minutes. And we would definitely encourage you to decant the current vintage of East Block and West Block. And Douglas, I'm not sure if you would recommend maybe a half an hour or an hour before, but something like this 2010, we'd probably only recommend maybe 15 minutes before you're going to enjoy it. But you have to think about it. This wine has actually been in this bottle now for 10 years, and you finally pour it, it's like, oh, I'm out, I'm alive, because wine is alive. So you really need to give it some time to get the air and to be comfortable with itself and comfortable in your glass. So right now, this wine is drinking, it's a dream. It really is. It's nuanced, it has gorgeous acid, and something that Tom was just saying before, the finish, it just goes on and on and on for what seems like minutes. It's really gorgeous. It has lots of energy, and this beautiful note. The beautiful nose is like a brioche that just keeps going with it, with the wine through the finish. And it's just seamless and silky. The texture on the mid palate is still all there. I think this wine is still, it's still alive, and it's still going for, dare I say, probably another 5 years, but it's a stunner. I'm sorry, I took all the time. I'm so excited about this wine. But Tom, you have a minute left.
Well, actually, what I would like to let everyone know is that, we don't go into making Chardonnays and say, oh, we want to make a Chardonnay that lasts for 15 years. Because quite frankly, we want to make a wine that when it is released, it is ready to drink immediately. However, when you do everything right in the vineyard, and then when the winemakers do everything right in the cellar, then you will have a wine that will age. Not all wines do age. And I think I said this to people, and I'm sure some of you have heard me say this before, only 1% of the world's wine are actually meant to age, or will age. 99% of all the wines that are consumed within 3 years of the vintage release. So when you have a Chardonnay, and particularly a California Chardonnay that's hanging around for 10, 12 years, that's extraordinary. And what I would say is, what I really love about this is the wine evolves, because it fit the fruit flavors, the forward fruit flavors, they fade, and then you begin to pick up this wonderful nuttiness. And if you look at my glass, for those of you that don't have the 2010, I have the 2010 in my left hand. You can see the color. It's a deep amber compared to this 2019 East Block. And the flavors on this are just incredible. And this wine with a miso cod, it just picks up all of those umami flavors. The same thing if you were having a chicken marsala, this wine is sensational with it because it has that earthiness and the mushrooms, and it really, really is lovely. And I'm going to put in a plug for another wine that I've been drinking, and literally during this pandemic, one of the wines that Cindy and I have had at least a bottle every week is our 2011 vintage, a vintage that, you know, the critics panned because they had two other good vintages before it, 2009 and 10. 12 was coming along, it was going to be great. They panned it, and so many wineries made great wines in 2011. And the 2011, I believe that's a wine that has another 5 or 7 years to go. And again, it's wonderful with some of these more earth-driven meals.
And it's amazing the energy and the acidity, which any great wine needs to start with balanced acidity. And that really starts with the balance in the vine all the way through the bottle into the glass. But there's just that balance still after 10 years of that, you know, what's left of the fruit and these, you know, really interesting characteristics that are coming through, and interesting in a good way. And then of course the fresh energy that's still there. The wine is still so alive. It's drinking like, I would say this wine's drinking more like a 16 than a 10. I don't know what you think, Tom, but.
Well, what I would say to our viewers is that I don't think there's a lot of it out there. And what I would say is our 16 went so quickly. And I can tell you, I went through cases and cases of our 16. I have set aside a few bottles so I can see how it will age in 10 years. But I did the same thing with our 17s. And I've had to put aside some of our 17s because the wines are so delicious now. You want to drink them now. And I encourage everybody to drink them when you get them.
But decant them. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely lovely. So to you, Douglas, and your fine winemaking. Again, we were grateful for your expertise.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just so the audience understands a little bit more about, you know, what makes Chardonnay ageable and more interesting is that when we squeeze the grapes, one of the quality hallmarks of great Chardonnay is we never squeeze it too hard. So most wineries would be looking to get 160 gallons per ton out of each ton of grapes. And Derek and I are right at the press at the time the grapes are pressed, very early in the morning, tasting off, and then we get to maybe 130 gallons or 140 gallons out of each ton, and we stop the press there. We're not just letting the press run through its normal cycle, recognizing that the last fractions of the press can add quite a bit of bitterness to the wine and then compromise subsequently the ageability of the wine. So what you see is what Kelly was highlighting is that when you have great Chardonnay, you have to treat it as such. And then you can see the wine develop these secondary and tertiary aromas that really, you know, really underline why Chardonnay is a great wine grape, right? Mm-hmm. And it makes it more interesting whether you're drinking this wine in year 1 or year 10. You know, it's a fascinating experience. And again, I can't emphasize enough in this vintage for those people who are watching, get equal amounts of East and West Block and watch them unfold. It's going to be great.
Oh, terrific.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. You know, it's just such a pleasure to walk through these wines and to get all of the insights from Douglas, from Tom, and very much from Kelly and Jim. Well, now we are going to introduce our hospitality team who are joining us from the tasting room in Calistoga. And they're going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in our tasting room and what's going on right there in Calistoga.
Hi, I'm Alicia
Hi.
Anton. I'm here coming from downtown Calistoga in our gorgeous tasting room. It is a beautiful day in Calistoga. There's people all over the place. We are so excited to finally be open and welcoming guests. We have missed you all so much. We're very lucky because we have all the wines here open and have been tasting them and talking about them, and really appreciate all the insight that our winemaking team and Kelly and Tom all have been providing today. We kind of chose which wine we thought was the best. Maybe we'll share it with people that visit with us today. I personally love the West Block. I've been with Knightsbridge since 2014, which was the year that we released the 2012. So I have been through 7 iterations of the West Block, and it has definitely grown and become a very elegant wine over the years. Every year it's better. So Michael chose what I like to call our romantic wine, and that would be the Ponticious. I'll talk a little bit more about the West Block. Michael's just going to say a couple things about the tastings and how you can come and visit with us in the coming months.
I will indeed. It's so Calistoga is in fact coming back with great vigor. The town is popping, as the kids say. Lots of activity here, and it's still available for reservations here in the room, and we're getting to the point where we can take many more reservations as we move forward. And we're actually upping the percentage of people, and we're going to move indoors, which we're excited about. But more to the point, we also are serving from time to time that Pain de Chevalier that Alicia was just talking about. And it is a favorite of mine because it's a favorite of my wife's. And it is definitely probably the reason I'm working here still is because I came here because my wife loves Pain de Chevalier. And it is very much our springtime wine. It's something that is just so fresh, it's so lively, it goes great. It's very aromatic, and sort of as everything is blossoming here, it's just great to have in your glass. And we often cook it when we're doing things like outdoor meals where it's sunny and bright, and it just, that is the definition of Pain de Chevalier Chardonnay to me. And we do a nice pasta with some very, very light pesto made of cilantro and basil, and do that with salad. And it's a great addition to the Pain de Chevalier Chardonnay. And that's pretty much what we do in springtime.
Right. And so if people want to come and taste with us, Michael, they just call and make a reservation or go online.
Call and make a reservation, go online. As I say, the number of people that we can see every day is increasing all the time, and we're happy to see all these people. And well, when it's available, walk in, and if we have a table, you can have it, and we'll gladly serve all these wines.
I definitely know some of the people that have joined us today. Eric Voigt, thanks so much for ordering the wine, the 2010. So I hope you're enjoying that. I can't wait to taste it myself. Julie Jensen, David Ingram. It's very exciting to see people signing up, but we really want to see you here in the fall when we open the winery, but also when we have our release events here in the tasting room. I'm also joined by Alana Ladd, who is what we call our Instagram guru. She's going to step in and say, she's going to say a couple of words about the wine that she likes.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I know we've been popping in and popping out here because we do have some tables outside, which is really exciting. So I've been pouring some of this wonderful wine that you might be drinking from home right now. And yeah, I would like to mention that my favorite wine out of the Chardonnays, these new releases, is definitely going to be that 2019 East Block. It just has a really nice, crisp, sort of refreshing driving force behind it. And I think it pairs really well with sushi, fresh sushi, which I really enjoy eating at home. You know, my parents aren't the biggest fans of sushi, and they're watching this right now, so hey guys. But I think, you know, it'd be great to just have with that, or even some Thai food from the local Calistoga Thai kitchen that I frequent all the time. So pretty fun. And yeah, the East Block is just very delicate also, but there's so much complexity going on at the same time. So,
I would definitely say that the East Block has a little bit more delicacy. The West Block is just a stunner. It just really, like Kelly was saying earlier, you just can taste it forever and ever and ever. It's a truly special wine, and we definitely sell that very quickly. We do have a small amount of these wines left. And for those that are joining today, I will send you all an email. We are happy to say that we will offer you our initial release pricing, which is no longer available online. In addition to that, everyone that's joining today will get 1,000 bonus loyalty points that you can use towards your purchase of the 2019 Chardonnays. So we're going to stay here and host more guests and drink more wine. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom. And thank you so much for including us.
Well, thank you so much. It's really exciting that we're finally now able to host guests again, and pretty soon we'll be opening up indoors. We just so appreciate the opportunity to taste these wines with all of our participants. We've had a few questions, one of which was about harvesting, and although I did chat with an answer, I thought, Douglas, maybe you could just take that question about, really we're doing so much intensive hand harvesting and hand farming and really caring for every single block in a very intensive way. So love for you and Derek to maybe just expand a little bit on that before we wrap up.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So as we're getting our organic certification in the vineyard, one of the keys to the quality of the wines you taste is that we harvest at night. So we begin the harvesting at anywhere between midnight and 2 a.m. So either Derek or I are out there guiding the crew to make sure the fruit comes in when it's at its freshest, when it arrives at the winery really cold and fresh. And then usually I'll be the one out in the vineyard, and then I'll hand it down to Derek, who will take off, he'll sort of receive the grapes at the winery. And so then we both meet down and end up tasting the wines as it's going through the press cycles, which is always a lot of fun because you get to experience sort of the potential of the vintage. But I'll pass it over to my colleague Derek, and he can add some of his experience to what the whites are like when they come in the winery.
Waking up for those 2 a.m. picks, sounds like a chore, but it is such a great experience. Seeing the fruit hand harvested, like Laura said, every single cluster, every single berry is cared for on such a unique and such a quality driven level. So some of the best experiences and best conversations that me and Douglas have are by the press, tasting the wine, deciding when, okay, this is the purest form of Chardonnay that we could get. It's really time that we cut the press and settle out for, depending on the wine, 3 days just to get out any of the, sort of phenolics or compounds that lead to a short aging cycle on the wine. So we get, once again, the purest expression of Chardonnay from our vineyard going down the barrel and then going through these cold, long fermentations. So back to Laura. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I really love hearing all about the quality measures that the two of you are doing all through the entire growing season, but definitely in harvest. And it's an exciting time that is coming up here pretty soon in the summer. Well, that is our program for today, and we just so appreciate everyone who has joined us. I hope that all of you have enjoyed walking through these wines. Thank you for keeping it interactive, and we just really appreciate you joining us, and very much look forward to welcoming you in person very soon. We will be open in just a few short months, and we just are counting down the days to have guests in person on the beautiful vineyard and winery property.
Cheers.
So cheers to all of you.
Yes.
Cheers, cheers, cheers.
Thank you all. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you.
Cheers.
Come visit.
Come visit.